Oh, hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending on which part of this beautiful country that you're in. You're watching Rebel Roundup, but it is Wednesday, which means it is Western Wednesdays. And that means today we convene the Buffalo panel, wherein we discuss issues facing Western Canadians with a unique Western perspective. We've got two great guests with us today. I'm your host, Sheila Gunn Reid, and I'm joined by my boss, Ezra Levant, in Toronto. But don't worry, he's not colonizing us with his Eastern ideas. He's a Westerner himself. Boss, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I'm extremely excited by our panel today.
Hmm.
I mean, they're not just people who have done a lot in life. I would consider both of them public intellectuals. And
Yep.
boy, do we need their help to analyze what's going on these days. So, Sheila, I'll let you introduce our guests, and I'm going to do my best to, listen more than I talk because we've got such a great panel
Impossible.
today. Yeah, I know it's impossible, but I'll try my best.
Before we introduce our guests, I just want to tell everybody how they can get involved in the show because I think they might want to. If you're watching us on Rumble, that's an excellent free speech platform. If you want to support the work that we do, because we'll never take a penny from any government to hold the government to account. Like, how could you do that? You can leave a Rumble rant over there. If it's over the $5 US cutoff, it is obligatory. We're reading it on air. If it's under that, we'll do our best to get to it, time permitting. If you prefer to watch us over on the censorship platform of YouTube, you can leave a super chat. That's their pay chat over there. And if you are unable to catch the live version of the show, you can leave a super thanks. That's their paid comment. And we just appreciate you choosing us as the network to support because we realize there's less money in your pocket than ever before, thanks to the Liberals who seem to be approaching a majority government. Now, let's bring in our panelists because I think we want to spend as much time as we can hearing from them as they analyze the news that just broke this morning as we came on air. So, our panelists today, excellent panel. We've got Stockwell Dave, former Stephen Harper cabinet minister, and then we have David Knight-Legg of Elements Capital Advisors. And not only has Stockwell been in government, but David advises government. So we've got a lot to talk about today. And I think the most important thing is that the Liberal government is one step closer to majority. I think we're going to be in election season sooner rather than later. As someone who previously denied ever crossing the floor and in fact was going to resign to spend time with family, has now crossed the floor to the Liberals, and that is Conservative MP Matt Genereux from Edmonton Riverbend. I guess I'll throw it to the guys first. Stockwell Day, comments.
Well, thanks, Sheila. I can tell you it's disappointing to see, not just obviously as a supporter of the Conservative Party, but just from a Democratic point of view. When you run to get elected locally, you tell people you're going to serve them under a certain party banner. And frankly, you either were lying at the time or your judgment capabilities are so out of line that maybe you shouldn't be serving. So this is disappointing. Certainly, it causes people to be cynical about the process. It obviously puts pressure on the Conservatives. Now we're at a place, I believe there's 3 Liberal by-elections coming up,
Yeah.
all in previously Liberal held ridings. So will Carney have to go to an election? Maybe, maybe not. But this is very disappointing from Democratic process, and I hope there will be a robust recall campaign that gets launched to make life, at the very least, to make life difficult for the MP who has done this.
Oh, good sir, I am working on it already. David, comments from you?
Yeah, it's a betrayal of his constituents. I think he's a
Hmm.
guy, but it's the last political thing he'll be able to do. And I think this is very short-sighted. I think moves like this by guys like this are so short-sighted because it doesn't just violate a democratic principle of constituent representation. It also fundamentally undermines people at a time where they're hurting. They want to be heard. They want to be understood by a government that's been kind of evading that. And this is a card trick. I also think that basically it points to a likely election coming up. I think this is, in so many ways, this is a big mistake by Matt.
Yeah, I see former Conservative MP and I think generally a good guy, Rick Perkins, has noted that Matt doesn't live in the riding and hasn't for quite some time.
Yeah.
And that he's already in British Columbia. So run in British Columbia if a seat opens up. I mean, not only are you not now respecting the democratic will of the people of Riverbend, but you aren't even there. And then you're going to cross the floor to the Liberals. Matt, I think he won by about 6 points. So he's held the riding since it was created in 2015. And, you know, you sort of, as demographics change, you've seen sort of that huge gap between the Conservatives and the Liberals close there. But he still won handily. And you know, he's completely ignoring the message sent by those constituents. Ezra?
You know, floor crossing this quickly after an election with no good reason other than, hey, I thought I would be more powerful and have a bigger, you know, salary. That's an insult to the democratic process no matter what. I mean, if there were a grand reason, if there were an important philosophical or ideological reason, I think people would have more patience for it. To switch to be a turncoat this soon after an election, we saw the same thing happen in Nova Scotia a month or so ago. It's outrageous, but let me add one more layer to it, because right now Alberta is gearing up for a referendum on secession. And in fact, I think tomorrow night the Premier is going to have an address talking about that. And there are people actively signing petitions to get out of Canada. And the people of Edmonton Riverbend did something positive. They say, no, we're going to vote for a federalist party because we think we can work with the system and elect someone to Parliament to challenge the bad directions this country is going. All right, you said work within the system, so we will. So they vote in that district for a Conservative. And I haven't checked, but I understand that district has always been Conservative.
Yeah, it has.
So in private backroom arrangements, some inducement, a secret inducement that we do not know, is proffered to this candidate who just ran months ago on being a Conservative. What do you think everyone in that district, everyone in that riding is thinking now? They're thinking the obvious. The system is rigged. When we do what we're told, when we play within the rules, it's rigged. They buy him off in a corrupt manner. The election was a sham. Imagine making the case for federalism in Edmonton Riverbend, saying, hey guys, no, don't lose hope. Just keep at her, guys. Just keep electing Conservatives. And if we need to, we'll buy him off. But just go through that gerbil wheel. Keep running around. I think that Mark Carney didn't realize the separatist echoes of what he did, because he just proved the system is broken for Alberta Conservatives.
Stockwell?
Well, I think that adds to it. There's no question. We'll see where the whole discussion goes. I think you want to talk about that in a bit relative to separation. I have to, further to what Ezra said, maybe Matt, and I say this charitably, maybe he needs, some help in terms of just stability, because, a wise man once said this to me, and I'm being careful here, that when something happens in politics that completely makes no sense at all, somebody's getting paid off. And I'm not saying that applies here, but it's either that or something so overwhelmed his judgment. As Ezra's pointed out, there's been a long-standing seat here. And first of all, if there is something personal going on, mentally with him, I hope he gets help. But there still is no excusing what he did. And constituents need to come down hard on this. And as I said a minute ago, we need to see a really robust recall. Whether it works or not, it sends a message. Fighting a recall campaign is expensive. It's time consuming. It's emotionally draining, and he should have to pay the price on every one of those fronts.
Well, and it makes people so cynical, because what has tangibly gotten better that you would reward the Liberals with your support? I mean, these are issues that Matt Genero campaigned on in the last election 90 seconds ago. So, has crime improved? Property rights improved, firearms rights improved? Have we dealt with illegal and out of control immigration or the cost of living? Have we repaired the trade issues with the Americans? No, and no. So why are you rewarding the Liberals with your support? It causes people to speculate on the things that Stockwell just mentioned, David.
Yeah, look, parties are an organizing structure for interests to be aggregated around real interests. And people vote conservative because they believe that freer markets and lower taxes and more autonomy will create more prosperity for them and their kids. And they mean it. And when you take away, when you disenfranchise the vote because somebody can do a backroom trade, you create a secondary market in being able to buy off representatives once they've been elected. And that's a really dangerous precedent for the country. I actually think that if there's one or two more of these, there's going to be a discussion around whether or not you have to have a waiting period. You have to sit as an independent. I actually think there's a fundamental democratic issue at stake here for the country that has to be addressed when the shoe's on the other foot, and it will be soon. Maybe not election after. If the conservatives did the same thing going the other way around, and you created this market for backroom trade that allowed you to just subvert the will of the people that had voted and just buy off those Maritimers we're always hoping would go conservative, right? And you create a super majority and you push through the entire conservative agenda based on our ability to buy off people that had voted for liberals, but we were able to buy their reps off once they had actually gotten into the House, you would have a huge scandal on your hands. And so I think this is going to have to be addressed beyond just our frustration because it's conservative crossing the floor. It's actually a fundamental problem and flaw if this is allowed to persist within Canadian federalism.
Well, and you could understand it. I wouldn't like it, but you might understand it if there were some sort of touchstone issue that just exploded that would either drive someone to the Liberals if the Conservatives had did it, or drive a Liberal to the Conservatives going the other direction. But that hasn't happened. So again, it causes that speculation.
Yeah, and we specifically make up for the potential for there to be issues of conscience by having votes of conscience.
Sure.
Right? There are issues where somebody says, I know these are my constituents, but I have a conscience, and on a particular issue, I'm not going to just try and vote the popular will of my constituents or my party. I'm going to vote with conscience. So we actually structure votes around solving for that specifically so that you don't create a secondary market in buying off reps once they've already been elected. It's a bad precedent. I think it's bad for him as a person and for his, whatever career he wants in the future as well.
Can I just jump in on it and raise the name of an arch nemesis of mine? Actually, we used to debate fiercely, but I kind of got along with her well. Sheila Copps was a member of Parliament, Liberal, and a cabinet minister, and she got reelected in the election in '93, I believe it was, on the basis that they were going to get rid of the hated GST. She said, listen, I will fight that and we'll get rid of it. We're not going to have the GST tax. As it turns out, the GST stayed, and the Conservatives, or Reform Party especially, did a great job at the time. They just harangued her on that issue. They held her to her word. They berated her. They went out in the riding. And you know what? To her credit, I'm going to say this carefully because she's a Liberal, to her credit, she resigned her seat. She said, you're right, I made a promise, I broke it, I'm going to step down, there'll be a by-election, and I'll give my constituents the chance to decide if they want to re-elect me. She did step down, there was a by-election, they re-elected her. Now, if anything, that at least is the honorable way to do it. And Matt, at the very least, should have stepped down, he should have resigned, and then tried running again as a Liberal. So it's back in history a little bit. Some of your viewers and watchers and listeners will remember it. But that is an honorable way to do it, and what General has done is completely dishonorable.
Stock, you're right. And the thing is, Sheila Copps was elected by her own people as a Liberal. She just caved to media pressure, and people thought that she had lied, and I think she probably did. But she was elected as a Liberal. What she did was actually quite moral by stepping down. Now she had to be cajoled into doing it. Right. What we're talking about here is a guy. I hear what you're saying. It is in a by-election happened. Let me give you something that I thought of from my history in politics. I remember in 1998 when Ralph Klein did something quite amazing, and he called for an Alberta Senate election which was pretty cool. And I was just a young tadpole, and I was the campaign manager for the Reform Party of Alberta, and we had sort of a primary, and we were campaigning hard. And Ralph Klein had agreed to host this. He was the provincial premier. Reform Party was running the candidates. And right in the middle of this campaign, weeks before Election Day, Jean Chrétien showed everyone who was boss and those uppity Albertans by appointing a far-left activist named Doug Roche, just right in the middle of the election campaign. His way of saying, yeah, Ralph Klein and you Reform Party, you can have your playtime. You can have your simulation of democracy. Let me show you how it really works around here. From Ottawa, I'm going to tell you who your senator is. And this has that same vibe. Except for that, at least it was on Ralph Klein's part, it was a speculative, ambitious sort of prototype. It was like a Hail Mary pass, or it was an experiment in a way. But here you have something more corrupt. Oh, you actually did win. You played by the rules and won. Well, we're going to re-engineer. We're going to undo that. This feels as demoralizing. There is one difference, though. There was no separatism referendum to harness that negative energy thereafter. And, you know, I always say that there's two reasons for Alberta to vote yes or to have this separatist referendum. The first reason is if it wants to become independent. The second reason is the same reason Quebec uses. It's the or else. Listen to us or else. Alberta has never had an or else. When Doug Roche was parachuted into the Senate, stomping on that election, what were we going to do? Or you're going to get mad? You and what army? Having that separatist button is the or else. And I think Mark Carney is taunting Alberta with this.
Yes.
He's taking a stick and poking and saying, I dare you to do something about it. Shut up and take it. Hey, welcome to Matt Genereux, our new Liberal. Welcome, Matt. This is how it works now. Just so gross. I'm very mad. If this were to happen in any other province, I'd be mad. But there's a double taunt here. And we're 8 months away from a referendum, and they're double taunting Alberta.
Yeah, let's rumble then. You know, like if Mark Carney wants to invite the ire of Albertans, I'm here for it. Just moving ahead from this, but also on just tying together with what Ezra just said, Tristan Hopper in the National Post has an excellent article which lays out all the things that Quebec has gotten because they have that or else backstop to their role in Confederation, from control over immigration, their control over income tax, pensions, even criminal law, unilaterally being able to rewrite the Constitution. These are things that if they were fixed, you would see the separatist heat in Alberta come down, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. And I think what happened today with the floor crossing is a hint to that lack of will by the federal government to address those issues. Anybody jump in?
Well, it's going to fire it up. It's going to increase the heat. There's no question about that. Do you want to jump right in on the whole separatist discussion right now?
If you want to. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to lose the friendship of my two colleagues who are on the show here, nor of great friends and supporters in Alberta. The only reason I'm not supporting and won't vote in terms of secession, it's nothing to do with the grievances. I share heart, soul, and mind with every grievance that Albertans have. They are well-founded and should continue to be brought up and fought for. Yes, Quebec, unfortunately, has that plurality of voters that they can buy their way into things that Alberta does not. My concern is this. First of all, even on its worst, angriest day, I don't know if 50+1%, I don't know that there's going to be that many Albertans. I know I've seen the rallies there. It's fantastic and it's wonderful. Calgary has changed over the years. There's a lot more, let's say, centrist-minded voters there, and they're going to control a big part of the vote. Edmonton already goes that way. The other concern that I have is anytime there's uncertainty on any issue, investment either slows down or dries up. So there is investment in terms of the billions that is on the sidelines waiting to see what's going to happen. The other thing, Sheila, if it did go through, if that vote passed, that starts a multi-year process of lawsuits, haranguing, a Supreme Court that's already stacked against Alberta. And that would be, and it could even move into decades. One group suing another, you got the First Nations groups. It could move into decades of uncertainty, which would be very harmful to Albertans, more harmful maybe even than the present odious situation with the federal government. So my proposition is that we work hard. We do what we were able to do in the past. We elect a conservative government. We get those things rectified. But those are the reasons I've got the concerns. And I hope people understand. I share the pain. It's just, I don't think we're going to see the gain.
Yeah. That was one of the concerns. I just wrote a book. It's called Independence Blueprint. And what I did was I relied on the 1995 Quebec Commission, that traveling commission that talked to tens of thousands of Quebecers. And they also had special commissions for, seniors and for students, realizing that they cared about different things. And they were very worried about investment sitting on the sidelines. I didn't write the book to spook Albertans off independence, but I did write it to propose a bunch of questions that the independence movement needs to have answers to. And anyways, it's available on Amazon. Thank you for allowing me this plug. David, go ahead.
No, look, I think, Ezra invited me to debate the great Keith Wilson and stuff. I took the Federalist perspective, but I think like you, I'd frame it a little bit differently. I think that the way Canada is structured as in its Federalist architecture, you've got incredible latitude for autonomy. I think Alberta has every opportunity, no matter what happens with the vote in the fall, to become the Monaco of North America. And there are a dozen steps we could take that are today fully within our power to take to create that level of economic autonomy. I for one, would love to see us continue to cut the corporate tax down to 5 and maybe lower to create a magnet for global capital into the world's largest democratic deposit of energy, oil and gas. We are 5 million people with more wealth, more natural wealth than any other democracy on the planet. We're far wealthier than Qatar. We produce the same amount of oil and gas. We're wealthier than Norway. We've got trillions and trillions of dollars of wealth. We have it within our ability right now, given the current federal structure, to cut our taxes, cut our red tape, significantly pursue with the courts, knowing that there are odds on how we pursue it, but on our own agenda, to control for immigration more effectively, to control for the judiciary more effectively, and to begin to win, step by step on 5 or 6 of the major things that we were starting to pursue. I mean, I worked on the Alberta pension plan file earnestly, and we got that put out there. And that's an extraordinary sort of story about how Alberta has created the lion's share of the wealth in the country on a per capita basis that's funded the entire CPPIP program for the nation. I think there are dozens of things that we're going to be able to do. I think that this vote is important because I think that a democratic way of representing the frustration people have with what's failing federally is critical. And I think that, like Ezra said, I think that actually just in my conversations, a lot of people that don't show up in the polls are going to vote to send a message, even though they don't intend. And I bet you would find this when you talk with some of the people in your circle too. I've got a lot of friends that have said, look, I agree with you, David, on the basic idea of us pursuing as much autonomy as we can within the federal structure and as a provincial government. And I back the premier with you 100%. I think she's doing the right thing. But let me tell you this privately, quietly, I'd never say this out loud at work. Me and everyone I know are definitely voting. When that thing comes down, we're definitely voting. Let's go. And then we'll have the conversation, debate. And these weird card tricks by guys like Matt Genero or the reaction you get from guys that I like going for coffee with, like Andrew Coyne and others that think different than I do. This overwrought, crazy, antagonistic, maple MAGA BS that comes at anybody that's starting to question the economic decline and the cultural decline and the rise of violence across the country in the last decade of completely failed economic and security policies by the Liberal government. Anyone that's questioning that, and all the frustration for the people that don't have the ability to sort of operate in global circles, saying, I've had it with seeing my wallet cut in half by people that are corrupt, that's expressing itself, and that will express itself in the independence debate and in the vote that takes place. But what's currently going on and what you're seeing in the airwaves that we're seeing coming out, with moves like this, it's ginning up a situation where I think people are, if they were surprised by Brexit, I think they're going to be very surprised by Wexit. And I'm a federalist, and I agree with Stock. I think that our priority moves are the moves that are completely within our power today. I think there's a lot of reasons for us to do that, but I think that people are going to be surprised by what happens if we continue to go down this track right now.
You're exactly right to refer to Brexit. And it also reminds me of, I don't know if you ever saw that speech that Michael Moore gave in Detroit in, I think it was 2015 or 2016, where he talked about, he was the first Democrat to realize what was about to happen, that working class people finally had an option in Donald Trump, and that Trump may be over the top and he might be a bit much, but he would be able to send a message they would never forget. Brexit was the same way. And I think the curse of the pro-Canada side is they just can't help themselves. Even our mutual friend Jason Kenney, he can't help himself. He talks about yahoos or blowhards, or he just can't help with the personal invective, which is that kind of stuff. It leaves a mark because it confirms the entire thesis that Central Canada it's not just the system isn't working. It's not working on purpose. There's a malice there. Like, did Mark Carney just accidentally undo Alberta, or was it on purpose? When you match it with a barrage of insults, people say, oh yeah, they actually hate us. Brexit, the sneer, there was a classism in the Remain side. Oh, you stupid, what they had a special insult for white working class, gammon. It's a British way of saying ham. They were basically calling people like a slab of bacon. Oh, you gammon. You don't know what's good for you. And I think it's that sneering condescension. You see it in about 90% of anti-separatist commentary online. Andrew Coyne's he's I think patient zero for this sneering approach. And I think, I don't know what's going to happen. It's still 8 months away, but if you have the Stefan Dion's and the Rosemary Bartons and even Jason Kenney, he can't help himself sometimes. It reminds me of when he was criticizing the truckers. You know what? On referendum day, everyone gets just one vote. And I think 1 million Albertans are going to send a message that Mark Carney will never forget. And he's going to prick them into it.
From your lips to God's ears, Ezra. I think we only have the gentleman until the middle of the hour, which is now. So, David, I'll start with you. How do people find the work that you do? You're very active online, very bright in your analysis.
Oh, just adding a leg on X. It's the only thing I'm doing. I'm thinking of giving it up for Lent or giving up drinking. So I got to decide which
Drinking will be easier.
I'll take Stock's guidance on which one I have to choose.
Yeah. Stock all day. How do people find you? And don't forget to plug your very excellent podcast.
Thanks for saying that. First of all,
oh, we lost.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Now
okay,
we can.
on.
Now we can.
You can. Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
I just had to switch mics there. Well, thanks for asking. I'm on X, Stockwell _Day. And it's interesting to see on X. I've been suppressed on a number of issues, and I can see the ones, and I'm trying to get a hold of my friend, I've never met him, Elon Musk, to tell him he's still got middle management there that's crushing people sort of in the mid ranges of conservatism, but on X. And then I've been doing a daily, I call it podcast, day-to-day news. You can find it on Spotify, you can find it on YouTube. If you want any of those contacts or any of my information, go to stockwellday.com. and you'll also find the documentary that I was sponsored to do relative to October 7th after the disaster that took place there. I share Ezra's concern relative, and I say friend, in all sincerity, our friend Jason. I've been really surprised over the last couple of years that it's one thing to be vehement and strong on an opinion, but what appears to be a degrading of people in Alberta who take these other views. It's sort of the Andrew Coyne model of odious pomposity, the slight rolling of the eyeballs and the moaning and groaning. These are real people, real issues. People who've lost, over the decades, they've lost livelihoods, they've lost family members in the 80s and the 90s, and I was serving. People were, I hate to wave this, but were committing suicide over the effects of federal liberal programming that was crushing the dreams of Albertans. It's been that way, ever since going way back to the 30s. So to demean people, to demean even the truckers, many of whom were shunted off to jail and had their bank accounts frozen for honking their horns. I'm hoping Jason changed his attitude there. It really smacks of Laurentian elitism, and I hope that changed. He's a dear friend. These are real issues for real people. And Jean Chrétien is the master at playing this card. When you come out, as Pierre was doing so effectively, you come out hitting hard. You hit hard on the issues. And then when the Liberals realize they can't win on the issues, they realize the economy is growing stagnant, they realize the debt is getting worse, they realize they're going to have to raise taxes, they say that's so un-Canadian. And Chrétien's style is always to wave the flag. When he loses the argument, he wraps himself in the flag and says, we are the best country in the world. Listen, I love Canada. I will fight for Canada. But the best country in which regard? We don't lead on any of the education indicators when you're looking at test scores. We certainly don't lead in GDP. We certainly don't lead in having the lowest taxes. Our crime rates are terrible. Our drug problems are terrible. We lead every country on the progressive social issues. We lead in promoting so-called MAID, helping people die. We are a leader on the transgender program. Only Danielle Smith in Alberta, with her brilliant and heartfelt legislation saying, you know what, adults have the right to confine or alter their bodies any way they want, but we're going to protect kids. That is so basic. And yet we even see, certainly the Liberals aren't endorsing that. And I'm saying to my conservative MP friends, you need to speak up on these issues. These are the game winners. And I'm just using the gender issue as itself, that's an 80-20 issue. But most people are afraid to speak up on it. They're terrified of being called hateful. They're terrified of being called phobic. And I'm saying to my friends, the conservative MPs, they're all in favor of this. But somewhere from the leader's office, I don't think it's from Pierre, some of the smart guys are saying, no, don't raise that issue. Oh, no, we don't want to upset anybody. No, you have to get people's attention. You don't have to be rude, but you can speak aggressively on these issues. We're going into long-term economic stagnation in Canada. It is not unpatriotic to say that. It needs to be consistently said, and we need to remind people every time we see Mark Carney make another announcement about what he calls investment, we used to call it government spending, when you are spending borrowed government dollars, that's inflation, and your purchasing power is eroded. And conservatives have to remind people every time you hear a Liberal spending promise, it's going to be tougher for you to buy groceries. It's going to be harder for you to buy rent because they're devaluing your money to try and raise value at the voter base. So I'm trying to stay calm here, but these are the types of messages conservatives have to hit harder, not back off as they have. They've listened to that little circle in the Conservative Party somewhere in Ontario that's telling them, no, be quieter, be nicer. No, you've got to give people hope and let people know hope there are things worth standing up and talking about.
Thanks, Doc. Now, David, was I too harsh on Jason Kenney there a moment ago? I know you're friends with him, and would you want to stand up for him in response to what I said?
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to do that, Ezra. I was just thinking about that. I think that, as you know, and this is something that came up when we had the debate with Keith. You know, I came back, left my banking career for a few years to come back because I care about Alberta and what I grew up with and what I got from Alberta, and I still feel that way. And I feel like the critical thing is that people engage in good faith on these issues. And I think that it's fair enough to point out moments where you feel like Jason's choice of language or his approach isn't generating that sense of good faith, because people are hurting and people need to know that these debates matter and that people can conduct these debates in a way that doesn't take what they're thinking or who they are for granted. So I think, you know, Jason's a big boy. He can stand up for himself, and he can certainly take a punch from you and throw some out. But in general, you know, he and I disagreed on some aspects of COVID, as you know very well. I was a Great Barrington Declaration guy. I wanted a far more libertarian approach. Used to tease me about, you know, I wanted the Swedish approach, and used to tease me about sponsoring the protests that were in front of the legislature. But I think on this issue of separatism, what's going to be required, and I think you should have Jason on, or there should be a debate with Jason, because he and I worked very hard in that campaign, as you know, and there was a lot of hearts and minds dynamics. And I think some people in his case, when he levels the criticism, they feel a certain kind of betrayal around that in a way that's very different from simply being a matter of how how the cards fall between a more federalist leaning approach or a more independence leaning approach. And I think that he has to be conscious about how he talks about these things, because so many of the people that back him and have backed him feel frustrated by what happened with COVID, and now feel frustrated about the way he's discussing or debating this issue of independence. He's a good friend. He and I are good enough friends where we can disagree and have a fight on these things. Let me say one more thing. One of my deepest concerns, and this came up in the debate, is that we do not allow the press or the agents within the Liberal Party to use the important debate we're having in Alberta over independence, or in more independent Alberta within federalism, to become a way of dividing the Conservative movement against itself in Alberta, but also federally. And I can see that they're trying to do this. Any sort of comment that's made, they want to push Pierre as hard as they can on it. They want to score points using what's happening within the Conservative family to try and score points in places like Ontario or BC, where there are swing votes. And so I think all of us need to be conscious that when we're having these debates, we're having them in good faith, and we're having them as a matter of principle. We're having them in a manner that sort of focuses on the fact that what we ultimately want is this country to be the opportunity society that we pass to our kids with less debt than we inherited, and with more opportunities to build a business and raise a family and dream some dreams here again. And I think if we can unify around those things, then ultimately we start to win on the policy side, and we start to win these elections federally and provincially. But I do believe on the independent vote that Jason's kind of misreading the mood right now. Certainly the mood that I see when I'm back and talking to people, and the mood that I'm getting from people that no one would ever guess would be for independence. I mean, people straight out of central casting that own or invest with global investors, et cetera, that are saying, I would vote to push Canada in a direction of a wake-up call that rouses it out of this decades-long slumber of being on the sidelines of history and the sidelines of what's going on the planet right now. And Alberta is the one place that's working currently in this country. And the fact that they are tired of the rest of the rest of the country failing on all these other metrics is critical. You know, we do more business between Alberta and Texas than Canada does with China, right? We do more. Canada does more business with the United States in 3 weeks than we do with China in an entire year. And somehow in our media, the focus is on all the wrong things almost all the time, you know? And right now, if you look at Alberta has been leading the country in every possible metric right now. We're winning And somehow we're dealing with this bizarre sense from Laurentian media that Alberta should be on the back foot explaining why it feels restive and why it wants to escape. Alberta wants to be the Monaco of North America. We want our kids to have a great place to live and grow up and build things. And we have every chance of doing that. The one big hurdle is constantly dealing with a rule set designed by people that are resentful over this autonomy and over the fact that the wealth comes from forestry, mining, oil and gas, and agriculture, right? So I think ultimately Alberta wins. I think the way that story gets written is going to be subject to a lot of debate and discussion. I think Jason has his heart mostly in the right place, but I think sometimes he lets his fighting spirit get the better of him. And I think that it's going to be incumbent on all of us as we go through this process to make the argument that we think is going to work. And I think there's going to be a lot of surprises along the way.
Well, Sheila and Corey Morgan of the Western Standard and our friend Tamara Leach, who's joined Rebel News recently, are going on about 7 or 8 city tour of Alberta talking about these. And we've got hundreds of people who've signed up to attend. So that's going to be a great barometer. I'm going to join for a few of those. I want to do what you just described, David, is talk to people, hear them in their natural habitat, ordinary folks. I mean, these, I suppose, would be a little more revved up than an average person, but I think it'll be a good way to touch grass, as the kids say, as opposed to just over consuming on Twitter or thinking that, the pundits panel on the CBC, it's hosted by Rosemary Barton, and you've got Althea Raj, Andrew Coyne, and Chantal Hébert, the entire spectrum of opinion from A to Z, and the geographical spectrum all the way from Montreal to Toronto. And it's been the same tired people for 20 years. And that's our deep knowledge base about what's going on in Alberta.
CBC is also the greatest promoter of why we should be giving more and more of our tax dollars, resources, and support to Cuba. And now is the time for MPs to be asking and to be saying, you want us, and we see it. CBC is just whining and crying because the U.S. is cutting off some of the oil supply to Cuba. And I wish we'd see on CBC, and I wish somebody would be asking Mark Carney, are you really supportive of the fact that Cuba is sending soldiers to Russia to kill Ukrainians? That's the Cuba, Mr. Carney, that you want us to support, hugely sending soldiers, Cuban soldiers, to Russia to kill Ukrainians. And China is doing the same, and North Korea. And Mr. Carney just blithely goes along. He knows he won't be challenged by the precious CBC because of the tax subsidies they have. These are the kind of tough questions we need to be asking. And I tell you, when you ask that to Canadians, you realize that we are supporting the killing off of Ukrainians through Cuba and through China. They have no answer to that. They're surprised. It's time we ask these tough questions, and it's time Prime Minister Carney came up with some answers.
Now, Sheila, you were saying some of our guests are time limited. How are we doing?
Normally we keep
we can stick it out.
Okay, you can stick it out. Normally we keep the guests till the center part of the show and hit an ad break and then say goodbye. But if they're willing to stay on, we'll keep them.
I have to, as to maintain my bilingual status, say au revoir. It's been great questions, and I have to sign off. Thanks, and thanks to your listeners and supporters.
Okay, all right. Then we'll hit an ad break, and we'll say goodbye to our guests. Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, Stockwell. I always learn a lot when you are on the show, and you've given us a lot to think about on this Ash Wednesday about being a little bit more ecumenical with the people we disagree with sometimes.
Great approach. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks so much.
Let's talk about Iran next time. I think that's...
Okay. Okay, let's end ad break. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll see you sooner rather than later.
Bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye now. Bye, Ezra.
Bye.
You've finished a long run. You're hot and thirsty. This is what we call a last resort. If your most recent electricity bill says the rate of last resort, then your rate is like the half-finished water bottle you noticed sitting on a bench. It will serve its purpose, but there are likely better options available.
Big news! Rebel News now has premium memberships on X, Locals, and right here on YouTube for just $4.99 a month on YouTube. You'll get loyalty badges, custom emojis, and access to members-only chats during our live streams. At $8.99 a month, you'll also unlock Rebel News Plus shows and our documentaries. But here's the catch. YouTube could cancel that premium tier at any time. That's why the best way to support us is at rebelnewsplus.com. It's just $8 a month, cheaper if you go annual, and you'll get exclusive extras like an ad-free site, comments access, and even the chance to submit op-eds. Wherever you join us, thanks for keeping our independent journalism alive and strong.
Gun bans make great distractions.
Trudeau may be gone, but Carney has picked up his same rhetoric.
We will quickly, and I mean quickly, reinvigorate the buyback of
Hunters, collectors, competitors, and defenders of tradition are still being targeted, while criminals run wild under Liberal policy. But we are fighting back. Join us, Canada's National Firearms Association, in defense of freedom.
You forgot your bathing suit. You really want to go for a dip. This is what we call a last resort. If your most recent electricity bill says the rate of last resort, then your rate is like the rental bathing suit.
Oh, okay.
It will serve its purpose. But there are likely better options available.
Okie doke. We're back. Ezra, we don't have a ton of time left in the show, so is there something in particular that you want to talk about? I mean, the Western Standard is reporting that Alberta's top baby name is Mohammed, despite the government saying otherwise. I thought was an interesting post. Mohammed tops the list of baby names because when the premier made the announcement about what the baby names really were, I think Mohammed was somewhere towards the end, but it's the number one name if you calculate all the spellings in this province, which is a hint to our changing demographics, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's Mohammed, Mahmoud, and there's different spellings. So I think that's actually the case all across Europe, and I'm not surprised it's the case in Alberta. Probably the same in Ontario too. Hey, I see that our friend David Knightleg is still on the Zoom call,
then.
And I want to make
him.
maximum use of his
Please.
time because I remember fondly that great debate he had with Keith Wilson at our sold out Red Deer event. That was a great event, and it was foreshadowing the intense energy across the province to sign up for this petition. I want to touch just a little bit more because about that, and I know that there are other things on our sort of news list here, but I want to make maximum advantage of David's availability. Sure. David, I understand that tomorrow the Premier is going to announce some details about the referendum process, and of course it's not just the independence question. I understand, for example, there's going to be an immigration question too. In fact, I see that the Premier's Chief of Staff is tweeting to sort of foreshadow that. Do you know anything about some of these other referendums? And if so, or if not, what do you think about this immigration question? Oh,
Ezra, I really like the way that the Premier is leading on these issues.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Oh, I thought you were frozen for a second. David, could you say that again?
Yeah, I said I don't have any specific information about the questions, but what I do like is that the Premier is getting in front of these issues and representing Albertans as she sees their interests and talking about them very openly. She's been unafraid to address what is actually a very tricky high wire act for a Premier dealing with an issue like separatism and dealing with something like immigration.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it marks a sea change because until just really over a year ago, it was unanimous amongst the ruling class that you don't say anything critical of immigration. One of the most cringeworthy moments of the 2021 election campaign was when, I think I got my date right, was when Erin O'Toole was asked if he has any difference of opinion with Justin Trudeau on immigration. And basically he said no, but it was sort of a moving, whatever Trudeau said, O'Toole had the same answer. So it wasn't even that he had a belief in Trudeau's policy. It's that he was absolutely terrified of allowing Trudeau to criticize him on the subject. It's not that Erin O'Toole was saying, this is the number I support. He was saying, whatever the other guy says, me too, please just don't ask me questions about it. And by the way, in the previous election, Andrew Scheer, I remember the founder of, the co-founder of Rebel News, 15% share with my friend Hamish Marshall. I've since bought him out. But at the very early days of Rebel News, we had a partner, Hamish Marshall, great guy, and he became the campaign manager for Andrew Scheer. So Andrew Scheer came by the office. It was super friendly. Hamish was there. We were all friends. And then I made the mistake of asking Andrew Scheer about immigration, and he dodged it. But he was there in person, so he couldn't hang up. And I asked him 4 more times, and that was the last Andrew Scheer ever spoke to Rebel News. And I wasn't mean. I just said, do you have anything to say about the quantity of immigration? And do you have anything to say about the nature of that quantity? Oh my God, those were like the third rail. It was like I was asking him to touch an electric wire or something.
Yeah.
David, why has it suddenly become, I don't know, possible to talk about immigration, whereas a year ago that wasn't true?
I think because Canadians have started to realize that it's okay to let people in the political class understand that you're not racist and you're not actually even against immigration. You're against open fraud.
Yeah.
I think the degree and the scale of the fraud in our immigration policies and our asylum policies, you know, when you see 6 guys that have been extorting people and destroying the Sikh community, targeting these young Sikh boys to join criminal gangs, violating the pact of the, the Canadian Immigration Social Pact, the Civil Pact, and when they're caught and they're discovered to have been liars that should have had no place in this country, and the people that are the victims of those crimes are all Sikh people in the Sikh community. And these clowns get caught, arrested, arraigned, and what happens? They say, we want to claim asylum, and they completely defraud the system again. And as more and more people see this, they start to realize, this has nothing to do with whether you support immigration or not. This has to do with whether you support people that are openly defying what Canada stands for, all of our values, the security of the country. And the number one communities that are being destroyed by this open, violent, easily manipulated, cartel and criminal syndicate dominated defrauding of the system are the minority communities that are new first-generation immigrants and their kids, right? So I think what's happened is reality is starting to mug this question in a way that's allowing people not only to feel like they can raise it, but to actually go further than that and say, I've absolutely had it with this, right? People coming in openly defrauding a healthcare system and education system that's been letting me and my family down for the last few years because there's too many kids that can't speak English. You've got classroom sizes that are blowing up. You've got hospital wait times that are extraordinary. And you've got people now that, the recent one where they've got this guy that did the most sadistic things they've caught him, and they found out that the guy is now using Canadian benefits in healthcare in spite of the fact that he's a known terrorist. I mean, you can't, these things used to be the subject of like Babylon Bee irony or sarcasm, right? And it's actually Canada's current system is so broken that you can't even make up the headlines. It's not even dark comedy anymore, right? And so I think, Ezra, it's reached a point where, as with so many of these things, something had to break and now it's broken. So you've got billions of dollars the country doesn't have that actual citizens and their kids have to pay back now for generations to fund an open defrauding of the system by people that are intentionally defrauding it using criminal and terror syndicates to do so. This has been known for years by people in the know. The fact that it hasn't been dealt with seriously by the government is a break in the trust people have with the government. People in CSIS have been warning about this. People that watch these things from a security perspective have been warning about it. It's people on the street that are sort of realizing just how bad it's gotten as they try and get basic public services and seeing they can't get them anymore. I think it's now just kind of an open conversation. You know, and I'm proud of the Premier that she's putting it on the table and raising it, something that's normally the domain of the federal government. She's saying we've had it here in Alberta and we've got to address it. And it's moves like that by her, by the way, that infuriate the so-called elites out east that are actually have the best chance of maintaining Alberta as an autonomous, you know, province within a unified Canada. Without her making moves like that, this would start to break because people have just had it with the complete mismanagement of the country by this stay-at-home bureaucracy that's now, did you see this now 80% more expensive than it was a decade ago? Yeah. I posted something on this. Do you know how long, do you know the performance of the CRA, which is one of the very few departments that the Auditor General can audit against a set of measured metrics? They are unable to answer a phone call within 15 minutes 83% of the time. Average time that you spend on the phone waiting for somebody in the CRA to answer that call is 31 minutes. Then when they do answer it, this is the kicker. So if you get lucky, if you're in the 17% of Canadians that can actually get your call answered and they answer your question, their error rate is 83%. In other words, 83% of the time they get the answer they're supposed to give you wrong. Now let's step back for a second. It's 80% more expensive to have people not answer the phone 80% of the time. And when they do answer it, they get it wrong 80% of the time. I mean, this is a postcard. This is a poster for AI taking over the federal government, firing 40 to 50% of these people that are totally incapable. And then the kicker is you see that they are absolutely outraged at the idea that they have to show up in person at work 4 days a week. Again, you can't make this stuff up. This used to be the stuff of comedy.
In a way, they're lucky that they don't get their phone calls. If you're waiting and you hang up in frustration, you just saved yourself a lot of money, sir.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. You don't want to win this lottery.
Right. You take your chances.
You don't want obese, sclerotic bureaucracy actually deign to pick up the phone on one of the days they're at work. You know, that's when the nightmare starts. So yeah, I think Canadians are feeling more and more confident that they can address these issues from a point of principle. You know, Ezra, you and I grew up in neighborhoods in Alberta. I played a lot of soccer. I ended up playing soccer at the university. The majority of the guys I played with, we were all first generation Canadians. Our parents had immigrated from somewhere else, right? Everybody felt lucky to be there. Everybody, you know, my dad sponsored a Bangladeshi doctor and his family through the church, right? And when you came in, you worked hard on these things. Your parents expect you to get great grades and stuff. There was none of this defrauding the system. There was none of this magnet of benefits being offered to people. People came with a lot of risk and they had to make it. And they relied on each other. They relied on their ethnic communities, their families, et cetera, to put it together and make it. nobody was against immigration. Everybody was an immigrant. And that in the communities I grew up in, people were working really hard as immigrants. What people are offended by, especially people that are immigrants, is when people defraud a system and they abuse it and they do wrong. And that's a universal proposition.
And in Toronto, when thousands march death to Israel, very thinly veiled death to the Jews, that's part of it too. That's a lot of what it is for me. There's places in Toronto, which used to be quite a Jewish city, 200,000 Jews here. Those 200,000 Jews are under siege. Jewish schools are being shot at. There's this one not far from my house. The same school's been shot at 3 times. Another synagogue not far from my house, 10 times has been vandalized. And I know those aren't what sometimes are called old stock Canadians. I know it's not old stock Canadians doing it.
Sir, Ezra,
those aren't Canadians. Those are people that have decided they hate what Canada stands for. They hate a pluralist, open democracy. And the crazy thing is our federal government has decided in their wisdom to pay people to come here to hate us. And that's what people are against.
Well, and that plays out in the public sentiment. So like in the last 30 years, immigration sentiment has shifted twice and quite dramatically. The first was very pro-immigration, and now very recently it's anti-immigration, and that's across all demographics and voting habits. So, and to Premier Smith's credit, she has directly engaged Albertans on this issue. She's saying, we're recognizing the problem. We're hearing from you. There's a problem. She engaged Albertans on the Alberta Next panel, which is, I think, unique within Confederation to have a premier do that. But Environics, I think it was September 2025, so not all that long ago, pretty recent polling data. I imagine opinions have hardened substantially since then. But it's it's 60% of Canadians, and that's NDP voters too, that's Liberal voters too, say our country accepts too many immigrants. And then when you drill down on that, the number one concern is the one that Ezra just brought up, and it's cultural integration, that they're not taking in Western and Canadian values. After that, the economics fall into place that people say, is driving up housing costs and making healthcare just completely clogged up. But the number one issue is a values issue. And it doesn't matter if you're a conservative voter. It doesn't matter if you are an NDP voter. And so I think, as Andrew Breitbart popularized, although I don't know if he's the first person to say it, that politics is downstream of culture. And I think the political sentiment is starting to follow the culture on this.
I think you're absolutely right. You know what they found in the United States when they ran very similar numbers? That the one cohort, when they ran the crosstabs, the one cohort that was most concerned about illegal immigration was recent immigrants.
Oh, we see this in the Lower Mainland out of the Chinese community all the time. They're the ones producing at the Conservative Party conventions the end to birthright citizenship policies. Right. They're the ones trying to get that onto the floor because they're saying our local hospital has become a hub for anchor babies from CCP oligarchs' kids, and this isn't how it's supposed to be.
It's the Sikh moms that hate the Khalistani terror network.
Oh, yeah.
It's the Chinese moms that hate the triads. Right. And this is the thing that I think has happened with our media. There's been this attempt to try and say that anything is racist, sexist, or anti-gay. Right. I mean, that's kind of the basic mantra of the left all the time when they confront issues that challenge their sort of cultural dominance on a particular framing. They want to call it out. So, everybody that's opposed to anything the left thinks is Hitler. Right. That's their shtick. But I think what's happened with immigration is that the people that are bearing the brunt of this completely failed policy this past decade are the immigrant communities that came here for the hope of what Canada could be. And they're the most distraught at seeing that stolen from them by an immigration policy that doesn't differentiate people that came here in good faith to build their lives and people that are coming here to defraud the country.
Yeah, and I think it, at the end of the day, is just the bigotry of low expectations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did we lose Ezra?
No, I was just daydreaming. There's so much going on. I'm delighted.
One of the things that I think was really interesting that Stock brought up that I've been doing, I was just in Abu Dhabi in the Middle East, and the discussions there about what is going on potentially with Iran, given the sheer vast arsenal that the United States has assembled. It's extraordinary to me that in our federal press we're not talking about this, but the Americans have been very clear. Venezuela is now, that energy is denied to Cuba and also to China until the Americans decide otherwise. And Venezuela has been taken off the map in terms of being an asset here. Iran is next. And those negotiations are, by all accounts, Bahrain is involved, Oman's involved, the UAE's involved, Saudi's involved. But the sheer scale of what the United States has assembled now is absolutely extraordinary. And the idea that they're just doing that to put greater heat on Khomeini and his negotiators, most military observers don't think that. So now people are saying it's going to be Venezuela 2.0, but it's going to be done at a scale that's absolutely unprecedented. And the question that people have, and this is related to what was been happening on the streets in places like Toronto, is why does Canada still have 600 active IRGC agents operating in this country when they have finally got designated after a lot of pressure? I wrote that op-ed on Chrystia Freeland, our soft Ontario Deputy Prime Minister, when your reporter confronted her, and I couldn't stand it anymore, and I actually wrote, she's the one that backed the payment to Omar Khadr. She's the one that backed using FinTrack against truckers, which is our terrorist network. And she's the one that was unable to answer your reporter's question about the IRGC. Why won't you name the terrorists? Right? Now that we finally got that done, why isn't the Liberal Party deporting these people? This regime has just killed ostensibly 30 to 40,000 of its own people, mostly kids marching for freedom. It's been so horrific that the U.S. has actually been drawn in and has now put 2 full carrier groups. And a carrier group is 26 ships that carry a series of unbelievable sort of amphibious and airborne weapons platforms on them, 2 of them in place, plus 15 air bases. And they've now flown over vast air arsenal. When the reset happens with Iran, it can only happen one of 2 ways. This negotiation actually results in Iran having to give up completely its nuclear ambitions and gets its fangs pulled on using Hamas, the Houthis, and Hezbollah regionally, but also its vast network of funding for terror operations and fronts, including the ones that have been operating with impunity inside Canada and have been the ones funding through Samadoun, the IRGC, the cutouts from Hamas and others that have been funding a lot of these street marches, right? We're going to see a real reset happen, similar to what you've seen with Cuba now being on its knees following Venezuela. I think we're going to see a reset on the anti-Semitism and the active funding of that anti-Semitism, via Iran and also through places, unfortunately, like Qatar, as the Americans take this next step. And I think, from those that are sort of in the know in this space, something is going to break one way or another in the next 3 to 4 weeks. It's impossible that it doesn't. And right now, from the reaction of the Iranians on the weekend doing a mock seizing of the Straits of Hormuz, through which 1/3 of all the world's LNG and 1/4 of all the world's oil goes. I mean, they're not playing this the right way. Khomeini came out saying, I can sink a carrier, which means the Chinese, with all those sort of airborne shipments, may have tried to ship carrier killer missile into Iran. But whatever happens next, I think we will see a complete reset of the dynamics in the Middle East that have led to some of what you saw in the streets and the justification of some of the anti-Semitism that the feds haven't dealt with. But it's going to go to the heart of this overlap between what's happened with immigration, the way terror and criminal syndicates and cartels have used Canada as a soft entry point, and what the Americans are doing with their foreign policy, with global energy supply, and with confronting these terror sponsor states. And Canada has a chance to be involved with this, but I think in the next month, we're going to see an opportunity open up for Canada to actually get rid of these operators that are funding the kinds of things that you've seen in Toronto.
Yeah. Very interesting. There's one more angle, and I thought you were alluding to this earlier. Venezuela is an enormous oil producer. In fact, it's a very heavy oil, competitive to Alberta.
Very clear, Alberta.
Iran, of course, is an enormous oil country too. It's one of the top.
Yeah.
Venezuela, the oil is being redeployed for good. It's being cut off from going to Cuba to prop them up. And Trump says that some of the oil sales are to the benefit of the Venezuelan people, which I believe. Imagine if Iran was redeployed in the same way. And my point is, in the meantime, in Alberta, we've wasted 10 years. I'm worried that Venezuelan oil and Iranian oil will be liberalized and used for good and perhaps in place of what we should have had out there. If over the last 10 years we would have built one or two more pipelines and brought more oil sands projects on stream, like even if we were to fire the starter pistol now, it'll take us years to get going. I mean, there's a little more room in the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We could do some by rail. I get it.
Right.
But I feel like, in oil and gas, there's a saying, you're always pumping today's oil today. You can't pump yesterday's oil. You can't catch up with yesterday because today you have to pump today's oil. And I feel heartbreaking. I'm thrilled for the Venezuelan people. But that oil is going to displace where we were going to send our oil to, maybe.
Well, I've got an idea for you on that, which is China lost exactly 550,000 barrels out of Venezuelan heavy crude, which is chemically identical to Alberta's heavy crude. The Northern Gateway pipeline would put 550,000 barrels exactly onto the Pacific coast that could go straight into China, which right now is our number one consumer of TMX energy. We could completely replace their reliance on Venezuelan supply with Canadian supply, which would provide us with $15 billion a year in trade, would provide us with an actual economic basis instead of this current insanity of our sort of, on our knees stuff with the Chinese with canola, right? It would give us soft power with the Chinese. It would give us 15% of our crude exports would be going to another country besides the U.S. It would reduce our dependence on the U.S., which the Liberals should be excited about. And it would immediately add another, it would grow our output another 10, 15% from the oil sands to the globe with connectivity. So, in every storm like Venezuela, there's an opportunity for Alberta, and that's a great opportunity. We could instantly begin to supply the Chinese with something they just lost because the Americans are displacing them out of being, adjacent to American regional hegemony and displacing them from their involvement with Venezuela and Cuba. I love what's happening in Venezuela. I wrote that op-ed on why it was legal, because you had some people here pretending to be closet legal eagles saying that what the Americans did was illegal. It was totally legal, and it was totally effective. And now you're seeing China desperately trying to hold on to Iran. If they deny China Iranian energy, and the Americans have been crystal clear. This is what they're doing from the time Stephen Moran was writing his paper and in their new defense strategy paper. But it's a huge opportunity for Alberta to create a real economic basis for diplomacy into China based on real assets and an understanding of their need for our energy and our need for $15 billion a year from them.
More than 10 years ago, I debated a Chinese professor at the UC. I'm just trying to remember his name exactly. I don't want to get it wrong. And I generally was opposed to Chinese investment in the oil sands, but I did a thought experiment. I wrote a book called Ethical Oil, but what happens if we do unethical oil? And I thought, if we allowed China to build a pipeline, they would not allow environmentalists to disrupt it. And if Ottawa had a big idea, they would get on the phone and boss Trudeau around or boss Mark Carney around, and they would get it done.
Sure.
And China's going to get its oil from somewhere or another. Better to get it from ethical Alberta than unethical OPEC. So I had this thought experiment. I was debating this Chinese professor. I got to dig up his name. He was a very friendly guy, and he wanted. But what you say is dead serious, David. In that, China is at risk of having even more of its oil cut off if Iran is liberated and reoriented.
Yep.
And it's funny because China gets its way in every other department in Canada. They're building the ferries in BC. They took over 11 ridings in Ontario. But the one thing they're not allowed to do, apparently, is, well, I mean, that Northern Gateway pipeline would not stop for anything if China was behind it. I don't know. I contemplate that. If China is going to be buying oil from somewhere, should it buy it from Qatar, Iran, or Canada? And my answer is Canada.
Every time. Look, here's two things I would say. Number one is the Chinese are very clear on what they think of the environment. They think it's important, but they don't think it's more important than giving another 400 million of their people a chance to live a life worth living outside of grinding poverty, right? They made a choice. They want people to be able to escape a life of grinding poverty for a middle-class existence. And it's impossible to do that without energy security and low-cost energy. And Canada provides the lowest cost landed energy that China can have, aside from some pipeline energy out of Russia. So they want our energy. They should have our energy. 90% of the people we're dealing with when we say China are great Chinese people. It's not always the CCP or a particularly bad person in the CCP, right?
You know what? Let me jump in. Sure, go ahead. You go ahead, finish your thought.
Look, Canada has an incredible opportunity not only to make billions of dollars, ultimately trillions of dollars in trade with Asia, but also to displace an enormous amount of emissions and to replace it with cleaner, in our case, natural gas on their grid. But in this particular case, to replace Venezuelan supply they can no longer get with an identical supply that goes into what they call these little kettle refineries in China, where they don't have to change anything. It's only like Venezuela and Alberta, surprisingly, have the same stuff. China can actually take our stuff on immediately tomorrow and refine it, right? And we can't refine it here. So this is a no-brainer trade. This is the easiest way for Mark Carney to keep his promise to the Chinese, do something for Alberta that would take the heat off some of the independence momentum right now, and actually put $15 billion a year into Canadian trade with China, and give us an expanded, and non-U.S. outlet and egress for a good that everybody in the world wants. And it gives the Chinese what they want, which is, readily available, more secure oil from a great democracy they can rely on, that the U.S. is unlikely to take over the way that they're about to in Iran and already have in Venezuela. It's a great trade for us, and it's something we should be collaborating with our American cousins on if we didn't have this ridiculous, culturally and economically insecure elbows up idiocy that is just a complete Laurentian, kabuki theater over being anxious over the Americans being run by a guy they don't like. He's not going to be there in 3 years. And it's, the opportunity for Canada right now is so extraordinary with CUSMA to create a bilateral free trade agreement that could be generational for us. It's a huge opportunity for us to actually do something profound with China. And what does China want from us? They want ag, forestry, mining, and energy. Alberta could do a deal. Alberta could just take over the deal making with China. We should take over the deal making with the U.S. Tell the Ottawa guys they can stay at home. They can, they can keep clutching their pearls until until Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance are the next presidents of the United States, and then we continue to do it. But this coming year is such a great year of opportunity. Since we're talking about China, it's the year of the fire horse, Kong Hei Fat Choi, Chinese New Year. It's an auspicious year for deal making, and I think it's Canada's year and Alberta's year to get a little more economic freedom, a little more, fire horse. We're a horse country in Alberta. Year of the fire horse doesn't come around that often. I think it's a 60-year cycle. The Chinese absolutely ready to do some deals with us, especially when the Americans continue to redefine the global rules-based order with a few more American rules and a few fewer Chinese rules. And this is our chance. So I hope Ottawa wakes up, and I know Alberta's already woken up, but I think Alberta's going to leave this year way better than we came into it, with a lot more leverage.
Well, that
Northern-
looks like a great place to wrap up our show today. David Legg, what a great pleasure to spend so much time with you and to learn so much as we always do. And I hope we can talk to you again and see you live and in person at some of these many events that are cropping up all over Alberta. Sheila, let me throw things to you to take care of any housekeeping and to say goodbye.
I will do that. So what have we decided, guys? Sinopex Northern Gateway Pipeline? That's what 2026 will bring?
Yeah, let's get some low-cost energy and get us $15 billion a year and a little bit of diplomatic soft power.
Yes. I think I'll clean up the chats. We'll say bye to David. Thank you so much for joining us for an hour and 23 minutes when I think we probably only promised we'd occupy 30 minutes of your time. David Legg, thank you so much.
Love it. Such great issues.
Thank
See you later. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
All right. We've got a couple of chats here, or maybe just one. This one is from Donald Land 6396 says, I hope this causes a lot of Albertans to sign up. I believe you mean to the independence petition. As David said, that support is coming from places you would not imagine. And I say this as someone who talked to a lot of people off the record at the Conservative Party convention. And you can see for yourself, if you go to a petition signing, that it's not a bunch of old angry white men, as the Laurentian elites would love to tell you it is, are young people and new Canadians as well. I think those are all the chats, unless I'm missing one. Ezra, thanks for co-hosting with me today and taking over all the speaking opportunity that you could. It's nice for me.
It was
nice
right up
for
my
me
alley.
to be a bystander.
In fact, there was so many things that I wanted to say even at the end there, but I just had to let the lad go. He was spending so much time with us. I do want to mention, though, that we just launched a petition minutes ago, and I think it's FireMatt.
It's firemat.com. I just did a video for it before I jumped on to the live stream with you. And it's where people can send a message to Matt Genero that he is subverting democracy and disenfranchising the people of Riverbend who have voted for him for 11 good years to send him to the House of Commons when he's now crossing the floor to the Liberals after completely denying just 4 short months ago that he was going to cross the floor to the Liberals. So you can find that petition at firemat.com. And I promise you, I will show up at his constituency office with bells on to make sure he gets it in his hands so that the people of Riverbend, but also Canadians from all across the country, have an opportunity to tell him exactly what they think about what he did.
Yeah. Well, Sheila, great to spend some time with you. Thank you so much for this. I'll see you in Edmonton on the weekend. Why don't you toot the horn for your tour?
Okay. People can find out details at independencetour.com. But if you are contemplating coming to the tour, make sure you reserve your ticket today. Some of the venues are smaller, are on the smaller sides. We just want to make sure that you get your seat if you want to come. We're on tour with Tamara Leach, of course, my new Rebel colleague, but also leader of the Freedom Convoy and someone who experienced government overreach firsthand, and then Corey Morgan of the Western Standard. He's thought about a lot of the issues, including the constitutional and economic ones, facing the independence movement. And then there's me. I got a brand new book. It's called Independence Blueprint, What Alberta Can Learn from Quebec. And I'll talk about the things that the independence movement needs to have answers to. People want to know about their pensions. They want to know about the military. They want to know about insurance and banking and all those things. And so we're on tour. We'll talk about our respective books and we'll take some questions. And you, as I said, it's at independencetour.com. I think we're at Edmonton and Red Deer in the coming days, and then we're hitting the road a little bit more after that. So Edmonton, then Calgary, Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, Westlock, Grand Prairie, and we'll populate the website with details as those become clear.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll be there for at least 4 of them. Edmonton, Calgary, Medicine Hat, and Lethbridge, some of my favorite places. And Sheila, thank you for doing so much work. I I think these are going to be great trips. As David Legg said earlier, it's a great chance to listen to real Albertans, to get the pulse of the province, something that the At Issue panel would never do. They're terrified, just like they were terrified of talking to the truckers. Great to see you, my friend. Thanks.
Boss.
I thought it was a good show today, and thanks for hosting it.
I did too. Hey, I did my best to host. Thanks, everybody. I think I'm hosting tomorrow with my friend Tamara Ugolini because it's Thursday. So we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks to those of you who pitch in a little bit to keep the lights on. Those who do the very free thing of just engaging with our content, sharing it with people whom you think need to see it. That helps us get up higher in the algorithms of these specific platforms. The more you interact with our work, the more it's served up to other people. So that's a free way to help us here. And as we say on the show here, if you find us offensive, maybe just don't find us at all.
Good night, my friend, or not good night, good day.